Hello, hello, hello. I'm Jessica, and you're here with another episode of Not D&D, which is brought to you by EN Live, part of EN World, the leading tabletop news and review site. And with me this week, I'm very excited because we're talking about Blade Runner with my guest, Tomas. Tomas, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, and thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Tomas Härenstam. I'm one of the founders of Free League Publishing and the CEO at present, and I also the lead designer for the Blade Runner RPG on the sort of structure system side of things, and the general just getting it all together. But it's obviously a teamwork, but I try to sort of steer the ship.
Try and pull it all together. So yeah, definitely. This week we're not doing a live stream. We were pre-recording due to time zones, but if you do have any questions we don't answer during the stream, you can always get in touch with Free League on Twitter at Free League Pub, and also Free League Publishing is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch. So if you have any questions that we don't cover in the stream, you can certainly get in touch there, or indeed on the Kickstarter campaign that is running live now, and we'll put the links in the notes there so you can click on it so you don't have to type all that out there. But speaking of the Kickstarter campaign, it's doing quite well so far. There's 3 days left, and it's just shy of $1.5 million last time I checked.
Yes.
So we had this as one on EN World. It was voted one of the most anticipated RPGs of 2022. So we're not too surprised that it's done so well. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an amazing couple of weeks here, and we're really happy about the reception this has been getting. So it's been great.
Excellent. Before we dive into talking about Blade Runner too much, I'd kind of like to talk about your background with RPGs, as I do with all the guests.
Sure.
So what was your first tabletop RPG?
It was a Swedish one called Mutant. It was pretty much, this was in the mid 80s. I think I got it in 1985. Back then, there was a huge boom, I guess not only in, all over the world maybe, but specifically in Sweden, there was a big boom, and a couple of RPGs came out. They were, back then, everything was in Swedish, and we didn't get much, role-playing games in English. That was a bit hard to come by back then, so it was more of a local market. So this game, post-apocalyptic game called Mutant, was my first one. And I'm kind of part of that generation that was just right in the right age back then for that initial RPG boom in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, I'm part of that, original generation, I guess, who got started back then. And this game Mutant is actually one of what is now our version of that game is Mutant Year Zero. So that we kind of, that was a bit of fun to actually make a new edition of that old game. That was my very first one I played.
Nice. Yeah, that is really nice to have that. So moving on from there to talk about, how did you end up being somebody who played a lot of games and is a fan of games? How did that transition to where you work now? How did you first start working in the industry?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a strange journey. It didn't happen overnight. It was very much a step-by-step process. Obviously, back in the early days, I was only just a role player, but I did very early on start writing games as well, designing games, but only for fun. I think I made my first one when I was 12 or something. Obviously, it never went anywhere. There was no internet back then, so it didn't have any way really to do with it. But I kept doing. It was always one of those. I think that's part of the role-playing hobby, that it's so much creativity. People design their own, they tinker, they home rule, they homebrew, and I was very much doing. I've always been doing that. So just transitioning from playing RPGs to writing them, that line was always very blurry for me. So that was not a big step in itself. But what happened later in the early 2000s, a new version actually of that game Mutant came out from another publisher, and that kind of pulled me back into role playing. I had been sort of busy with other things for a number of years there around the turn of the millennium, but in the early 2000s, that pulled me back in, and I started freelancing, doing some work for that game, and that's where I met the other 3 people who were the original 4 founders of Free League Publishing. And that just started as a group of people who designed freelance stuff and played games together, and that's over 10 years ago now. And that then turned into just a freelance group called Free League. It's named after a faction, a group within the game Coriolis, which we also wrote for. So it's taken from there. And that publisher went out of business, and we took over some of their projects, and we said maybe we should start a small company. But that was obviously very much free time hobby level thing for years. We founded the company in 2011, and I think it was just a free time weeknight thing until for the first 5 or 6 years. But then it just one thing led to another. Things started picking up. We got some attention for a number of games. Maybe the first one that got some real attention was Tales from the Loop. I think that was our third game internationally. We had done Mutant Year Zero and Coriolis before that, but I think Tales from the Loop kind of put us on the map a little bit more, and then that led to some other things, and then we did, Alien, and things just kind of ballooned from there. And then now we're at least a bunch of people here who actually do mostly this for a living, which is a bit strange looking back. It's been interesting.
Wow, excellent. Yeah, you've had some amazing titles you've got to work on. Like you said, you had Tales from the Loop, the Alien RPG, Forbidden Lands, and now Blade Runner as well. So plenty to keep you busy. It makes sense that it's now a full-time venture. And especially in the last month, I imagine, been very busy the last few weeks running the Kickstarter campaign and getting everything done. So let's talk a little bit about the Blade Runner RPG. So that's why we're here. So for anyone that's not familiar, it is still live now on Kickstarter. The link is there, and the link is below in the show notes, so you can just click on there. So you have 3 days left if you wanted to get in and get involved on this. So take a look out there whilst we're talking. So it looks like a beautiful book. So first of all, it's a really big license, obviously, Blade Runner, because so many people know the films and love the films. So I've had a question from Andrew Prowse, who said, how have you captured the experience of the films and the world in the role-playing game?
Yeah, it's been a fantastically interesting design challenge, because I mean any RPG is a challenge to design. I mean everything has to kind of come together. The rule mechanics, the graphic design, the art, and the setting material, it all has to work together. So it's always challenging. I think this one particularly so because the films are so iconic and beloved, and also quite complex. They are not like they are fun and exciting, but they also have a lot of depth, and they bring up a lot of existential questions, difficult moral dilemmas, and to bring that into the RPG is definitely challenging. So we've done it in a number of different ways, both mechanically and also in terms of the actual, we call them case files, but they are like the scenarios or adventures that you'll be playing, that they will also draw on these kinds of themes and issues. So it will be a game that kind of does bring these kinds of issues to the forefront, and you will have that kind of, I don't know, moral struggles, dilemmas to that will be that's not all you'll be doing, but that will definitely be part of the game. I guess when you see the full and complete game, I guess you can see exactly how that works, but it's definitely part of the game, is something that we've been working a lot on.
Yeah. And if so I think a lot of people love, as you say, love and know the Blade Runner films. They know the setting and familiar with it. But if somebody was unfamiliar with the setting and we're just looking at the RPG, how would you describe the setting and the world in the game of Blade Runner?
Oh, that's quite a question. We call it neo noir for short. I mean, we don't call it a cyberpunk game. I don't really think it's cyberpunk exactly. It has relations to cyberpunk, but I wouldn't exactly call it. I wouldn't use that term. So it's very much a noir game of that kind of aesthetic, of these rain-soaked streets and that kind of conflicted protagonist and all of that. So but it's placed in this neon wonderland type of environment, this futuristic, almost retro future wonderland city that is the Los Angeles of 2037, which is the year we chose to place the game in. And in this environment, you will be playing Blade Runners who are assigned to a specific unit in the police force that investigate cases that in some way or another revolve around replicants, these artificially designed beings, or that are core to the Blade Runner films and the entire franchise. So in the game, you will be investigating cases, but these cases can take any number of forms. So it's not always the fact that you will be chasing some replicant. You might be doing a wide variety of different things in this game.
Excellent. And someone else, Andrew's asked again, is about so obviously the films are so iconic and it's such a big story there. So how can people feel that they're playing a unique part in the world and that they're not just kind of echoing and following the movie, telling that story again?
Yeah, that's an interesting balance, because that's something we felt when we designed some of, like, also Alien, and we also did the One Ring.
Yeah.
There has to be a level of familiarity. You want to invite players into the game and make them feel comfortable enough in the world to kind of be able to act in it. And for that to work, it actually helps to use some familiar elements. It's not only you go to the exact same places as in the films, not exactly. You can use some of those elements to get that sense of, oh yeah, I know where I am now. And then from there, it's much easier to build your own story. And that's kind of the approach we had, that we use some of these very familiar elements as kind of to ground the players in the world, but then the stories we tell, they go in quite different directions. And I think working with this, we kind of just realize how much there is to actually do and discover, and the multitude of stories that can actually be told within these confines of being a Blade Runner, which is it's been quite fascinating. And it's also inspiring to read the other media. There have been, I mean, there are the comics now from Titan Books. There's an anime. There's other stories being told in the Blade Runner universe that also kind of showcase that kind of width and variety that this universe can be and to place stories in.
Yeah, excellent. The film is known for having, beautiful cinematography and, things like that. And I think you can see in the books here, you've chosen kind of beautiful artwork. The components I've got on the screen right now, it looks like there's loads of gorgeous stuff. Can you talk us through what people will be kind of getting physically when they get their copy, and a bit about kind of the artwork you chose?
Sure, yeah. As for the physical bits, what we see there on the screen is the starter set and all of its components. They're pretty much, I mean, there could be some, this is still not the final design. There could be some changes,
of course,
but
yeah.
pretty much this is it. And as you can see, there's a bunch of handouts. I think it's like 26 or 7 handouts. So it's going to be, since this is a focus,
it's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff, and
Yeah.
it really serves two purposes. That this is you work cases. This is casework, investigations. You'll get handouts with that will have clues and evidence that will lead you on in the investigation, but also these handouts really help to immerse you into the world. So you have a number of maps, as you can see. You have some data files. You have photos, like the famous Esper photos that you can see in the film, the one that you can zoom in. So you have some of that. You have a variety of handouts, and of course a big map of Los Angeles that you can see in the background. There is a condensed rule book, and then there is the scenario book that is a full-length case file in the starter set that is called Electric Dreams. That you will that's a full, it's not a small starter, it's a real fully fledged scenario or case file that you can play. So really this, and you have some dice and cards and stuff too. So
yeah,
everything in there is enough to play this initial scenario that will keep a group busy for a number of sessions and really get you into the game. So that's quite a bit of stuff there to kind of go through. As for the art style, the art, I mean, we most of the art, almost all of it, is done by our sort of in-house artist. His name is Martin Greep, and he does a lot of the art for our games. Is also one of the partners of Free League, so he's very much involved in the entire process from just concept work to just carrying it out, and it's been having one person, and especially with someone as talented as he is, doing a game like this, I think really helps to bring the immersion to the game, and that consistency and that tone, I think that really works to immerse the player into the game and into the game setting. We generally try to avoid having too many different artists, because even if they're individually very good, if you have like 20 different artists with 20 different art styles, that would kind of put you out of the illusion of the world. So that's why we prefer to work with very few.
just one cohesive kind of design and one vision for the artwork. It looks absolutely beautiful, which is something I think we've come to expect from kind of all Free League games anyway. But yes, I'm very looking forward to seeing all the artwork, as you can see some on the screen here. But talking about the game a little bit more kind of mechanically, so how does the game work? What are the kind of rules of the game?
Oh yeah, we have what has turned into kind of a house system that has gotten the name Year Zero Engine. It only started out as the rule system that we designed a decade ago for Mutant Year Zero, and then it kind of evolved from that. And we've been using versions of it for our games, and this is no different. We have changed some bits though this time around. Most of our other games use pretty big pools of d6s, six-sided dice. That's kind of, and then you use them in different ways. This one actually instead uses, you only generally roll 2 dice, but they can be of different sizes. So it works a bit differently in that respect, but otherwise it's fairly similar. I think what we, in a general level, what we want to do with the rule system in Blade Runner is to keep it to some extent out of the way. I mean, it should be there to kind of nudge the story in the right direction and support the kinds of style tone that Blade Runner should have, but otherwise it should not get in the way. This is not a super crunchy system. It's a fairly rules light system so that players can focus on the casework, the investigations, and also on their own character development, because that's also a big part of Blade Runner, kind of this introspection almost, and who are you really? I mean, so too much rules and too much dice rolling kind of gets in the way of those kinds of things. So that's why we kept it fairly rules light this time around.
Sounds excellent. Yeah, I can see this section on the page we're looking at here. It's talking about kind of promotion and humanity. So how does promotion work in the game? Is that kind of you develop your character more and get more cool stuff?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's one of the things that this is an example of how we tried to get a feel of what the kind of moral dilemma or the kind of difficult spot that you will find yourself in as a Blade Runner. Because on the one hand, you need kind of to do your job, and that will give you the promotion points, which you will need for different things. You can use it to acquire gear, you can use it to and any number of things. But then you will also be placed in difficult situations. This is not a game where you can just solve the case, go home, be happy. That's never going to be a case in Blade Runner.
No.
Exactly. So that's
not a happy game.
No, not really. Not that happy. You can have fun playing it, but it's not really a happy game. No.
Yeah.
So these humanity points are there to kind of reinforce the idea that you cannot just focus on your duty or your job. There's another side to things, and that's where these humanity points come in, because you will be faced with a situation where you might feel you need to go your own way and not do your job, or actively choose to disobey for some reason and hide evidence or whatever you might need to do because it's just the right thing to do at the time. And that's where these humanity points come in. And so what you'll be doing in the game is you need to balance these things. If you go, you won't progress very quickly. It won't be, if you only focus on the promotion points and just do your job, that's not a recipe for perfect success. But also if you go all the way to the other side and just go completely rogue, you can do that, but then you probably won't stay as a Blade Runner very much longer, because you can't stay in that role. So, and that might be a choice you go at one point. You might decide to actually just leave. But for the most part, you'll be kind of balancing these things, and I think that's kind of as we see both Kay do, the protagonist of Blade Runner 2049, and also Deckard in the original film, that they are sort of torn between what they should be doing because it's their job and what they sort of their conscience tell them to do. And I think that balance needs to be there in the RPG as well.
Definitely. So you mentioned with the promotion points, they're used kind of mechanically, they get you stuff and things. What do the humanity points, how do they work mechanically in the game?
Both promotion points and humanity points can be used to improve your character, but to do that,
different things.
Like increase skill levels and gain. We have something called specialties, so you can learn new specialties and increase your skill levels. That will you can use promotion points and humanity points to do that. So it basically that would kind of enhance your character and make it mechanically progress. You can using these points.
Okay, excellent. Are there any other kind of mechanical bits or how the game works that we should kind of know about?
I think one thing that I'm looking forward to people trying out is
Mhm.
the chase rules.
Oh,
Chases feel they're very much appropriate for a game like Blade Runner, and it's not
yes.
something we have done so much in the other games. I guess it's
Mm.
possible, but we haven't really focused on it. Here we have
Mhm.
a fairly big subsystem for chases, both on foot, in vehicles, and in the air using these flying spinner vehicles. So
Mhm.
you have something called chase maneuvers. You can use
Mhm.
cards to kind of choose, and also chase obstacles. You kind of get almost like an obstacle course that you have to
Yeah.
navigate using these chase rules. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to people trying that out.
Yeah, I think that sounds like it's like the action scene in the movie where, you've got the chase scene going on like that. So it'll have
Yeah,
that kind of excitement moment in it.
exactly. That's the idea.
Wonderful. Yeah. In terms of kind of creating the game, how long has this been kind of in development, and what's it been like working on creating it?
Right. Yeah. We started, unless we signed the agreement. I don't remember the exact date right now, but it's been pretty much for the last 2 years. It's been a pretty
Hmm.
intense development.
Yeah.
We had thoughts, had started, considering things and thinking about it on a conceptual level even before then. I think ever since, I
Hmm.
think the idea came up around early 2018, so that's more
Oh,
than 4
wow.
years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been around. We've been, first couple of years, it's been mostly, thinking about it and how it could be and what it could be like if we did it. And
Hmm.
then in the last 2 years, we've actually been working very hard
Hmm.
on doing it. Yeah, it's been an interesting process. We have had, so far mostly internal playtesting. We hope to
Hmm.
be able to share the game in PDF
Hmm.
format with the backers fairly soon, as soon as
Oh,
everything is
exciting.
done and
Hmm.
fully approved, because this is a licensed game, so we have to
Of course.
get
Yeah.
things approved by the licensor before we
Hmm.
can share or publish anything. So yeah, really now it's we feel. I mean, we're not done 100% done, but pretty much
Hmm.
now we're at the point where it's just the finishing touches, and we just look forward to really be able to share it with everyone and see how people will respond to it, because that's really
Yeah.
what the big thing.
Yeah, that's the fun bit, is seeing
Yeah,
people enjoy the game and use it. For
yeah.
people that back the Kickstarter campaign, when will they be expected to kind of get the PDFs and the physical books? What's the timeline for the project?
Right. Yeah, the PDFs, which will we hope to be able to share within a number of weeks after the
Oh,
Kickstarter
okay, great.
ends. So that's fairly
Hmm.
soon after. I don't want to say exact date or
Of
anything,
course,
because
yeah.
it's also up to, we need to finish everything, and then the licensor needs to have their chance to review everything and so on. So
Hmm.
it's going to be a number of weeks. I don't know how many,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
hopefully not too long. And then of course there is the printing the physical stuff.
Hmm.
That takes time, especially these days
Yes.
with all the supply
Hmm.
issues and shipping issues and all of that. So we hope and plan for a physical release, first to backers and then in general retail before the end of the year. That's the
Uh-huh.
goal. That's what we're working towards. So hopefully that will work out. But again, things can happen, so it's not 100%, but it's definitely the goal.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. Well, at EM Publishing, we publish games as well, so
Yeah,
sometimes things happens with, especially with shipping these days as well. So
yeah,
maybe the books are all ready and they're on a container sat at the port
exactly.
waiting. So,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
and what can you do? No,
No,
that
that
makes perfect
happens.
sense. No, that's
Yeah,
exciting. So it sounds like that could be something maybe around Christmas time that people could
yeah.
have. So maybe a nice festive game of Blade Runner could be on the menu for that.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Um, so I think a lot of people are interested in Blade Runner because it's such an interesting kind of world and setting. So do you have any good stories from internal playtesting, or some nice kind of moments you could share with us?
Yeah, I guess so. I think the problem is that I think most of them would be kind of spoilery, because
Oh,
most of
okay.
the we
Yeah.
did play testing on the Electric Dream scenario, and there were some
Hmm.
pretty intense scenes there at the end that
Hmm.
were kind of, that I will remember for a long time. But on the other
Hmm.
hand, I can't really go into them because they
Yeah,
will
yeah,
be
that's
complete
fine.
spoilers of the scenario. So I guess I'll just keep it, a bit mysterious. But there is definitely
Hmm.
potential for some intense scenes in this game.
Excellent. So some kind of high role play moments.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if somebody was looking to run the game of Blade Runner, what kind of advice would you give to GMs that are wanting to kind of create this story for their players?
Yeah, that's. I mean, we will have these case files. The first one, Electric
Hmm.
Dreams, and then more of them down the line, obviously. But since we also want to support game masters to create their own case files, because this
Hmm.
game will be focused on investigations. So you need some kind of structure for that. It's not
Hmm.
a sandbox game like some of the other ones we have done. It's more. It has the structure of the case file. So you need kind of to design that framework before you play. But
Hmm.
to help game masters do that, there is plenty of support in the book. Especially we have some of them are stretch goals that are now unlocked. So we'll have generation
Okay.
case file generators and things that you can really quickly generate at least the core of a case file
Hmm.
of your own for your players to play. So I think
Hmm.
just getting into all of that is one way to really, if you want to play things beyond the official published case files that will be
Sure.
publishing. But I think on a more general level, I think this is a game that really benefits from getting into the mood. I mean, this is,
Hmm.
don't play it in a brightly lit room in the middle of the day.
Okay.
If you can avoid it. Or, I mean,
Yeah.
having like a moody, like use music, turn the lights down as it get this the right mood for the games. This is a game that relies very heavily on just nailing the mood and getting that feel of Blade Runner right, and
Hmm.
that really helps
Hmm.
immersing yourself in this world and in the game. So I think that's the single, simple, straightforward advice that I'd give to people who want to run this. That have a thought about how to kind of frame where you sit, or if you play online, you can also
Hmm.
use different tools
Yeah.
like music and art and things to kind of set the mood for everyone.
Definitely. So thinking ahead, like so the book comes with a lot of case files and scenarios in as well with the core book. But going beyond that, will there be kind of future releases and things happening for the line? Is that kind of the plan or?
Right, yeah. Initially, the plan is to publish more of these case files, and they're quite
Hmm.
meaty. And the plan is also to tie them together. So even though they're standalone,
Okay.
you can play one case
Hmm.
file and be done. They can also characters or maybe some plot elements can carry
Hmm.
on to the next one, so they create a bigger campaign narrative. So that's
Mm.
like the core focus
Yeah.
now. More case files, basically.
Yeah.
But of course, then we have some ideas of source
Hmm.
books that might have a look at other eras, other
Oh yeah.
locations, other types of characters. We get this question a lot. Can you only play a Blade Runner? And yes, in the core game that is the case. You
Hmm.
can only play a Blade Runner, but possibly down the line, that we could do something that looks at other types of characters as well. But it's
Hmm.
not in the short term. That's further ahead and something we have
Yeah.
to
That's
confirm.
yeah.
But it's we have ideas in that direction for
Hmm.
sure. But in the short term, it's more case files.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. And when people open up a case file, what can they kind of expect about the kind of the structure and what they'd expect to see in a case file?
Yeah.
Without spoilers, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think a key thing that was always
Mhm.
part of what we wanted to do is to have a lot of handouts. I think, and that kind of works. One of the big inspirations for this was, well, actually two. And one was the old James Bond RPG from the 80s that had this
Mhm.
envelope with handouts in it that I always thought were really cool.
Yeah.
We do that, but we just took it up by a notch or three. So it's basically there's when you play this, and this is work quite well in playtesting, that you kind of fill as you play and progress the scenario or the case file. You will have these handouts that will kind of fill the table, and they will really immerse you into the world. But there will also be clues in there, so you really have to go through the evidence, to have a think and connect the dots, and that process is quite interesting and a lot of fun. And another inspiration for that is actually
Mhm.
not a role-playing game, but the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective games that are
Oh yeah, yeah.
work in a bit of a similar way. They're not role-playing
Mhm.
games, but they're also, you can have the map, you go to places, you collect evidence, you form kind of an hypothesis of what's going on. I mean, that was an inspiration. This doesn't work exactly like that, but it's kind of similar, that you'll be going places, you have locations, you have characters to talk to, you collect evidence, but then something that will keep the pressure up, because the risk with investigative role playing is that it kind of slows down to a halt almost. If players get derailed, they go off the wrong direction, or you just get stuck investigating some minor detail that's not really that important. So to avoid that, we also have something we call countdown events. So there is a countdown in each case file of things that will happen to keep the drama up. And these will be events that will happen no matter where the players go. So they will be, if they're too slow or going in the wrong directions, things will just keep pushing and keep happening that kind of force their hand in the end. So to kind of keep the drama up and the action going. So we think that's a kind of a nice balance between leaving a lot of the freedom to the players to do their casework and the investigations, and then you have these countdown events that would kind of push things along no matter what. So that's kind of the way they're structured.
That sounds great. That sounds good for, like, because I know sometimes when I'm playing a game like that, sometimes you just get stuck as a player.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, I don't know where we're meant to go
yet.
So
exactly.
It's nice that something will happen that will push you. So, but maybe there's some consequence for that, I imagine, because maybe if you'd figured this out before, you would have been prepared for this situation. But now you're just reacting to it.
Exactly. You kind of get caught on the back foot a little bit. So instead of being kind of there before, you come to if some dramatic thing happens, if you were fast in your investigation, you might be there before it happens and stop that event, or if you're not that fast, you might be just arrive after the event, and so it will impact the story, and the story will turn out differently depending on how well you did in the investigation. But even if you didn't do that well, the story will not stop. It will keep it will be a cool story no matter what. It will just be a different story. The game will not bog down to a halt no matter what you do.
Okay, that sounds really great. And how many kind of these case files do you get? In the first starter pack, it's called the Electric Dreams.
That's actually only the one. So it's but it's a pretty big one. These case files are not something you I guess you could do in a single session, but that would be a real marathon. I think we did it in internal play testing. We did it in 3 sessions, fairly meaty sessions. So I think that's kind of what we're aiming for. If you want to flesh it out more, you can draw it out over much longer than that. We tend to be pretty fast when we play. So I mean, definitely if groups want to, because something that I haven't touched upon yet that is also important in this game is something we call downtime. So we divide the day into shifts. So basically you can go to one location per shift, and there are 4 shifts in the day. That's basically the structure of it. But then every 4th shift you need to have some rest. You need to have a downtime. So and that means you go home, you go out, you do something on yourself as an individual character, and leave work, basically. And that is also, I think, looking at the films, you have these scenes where they kind of go home to wherever they live and have something, and you get a different sense of the character there. And that's also part of the RPG. So in these downtime scenes, these downtime shifts that you'll be playing, you will split up and play individual scenes, fairly short, but still it's an opportunity to really go into your own specific character. And there can be some interesting overlaps there between the casework and the personal issues, because each character also has a key memory and a key relationship. So there's a personal element to every character, and that's something you can develop and explore in these downtime shifts. And if you want to go deep into that, then of course you can draw out a case file to almost like a small campaign almost. But generally I would say a case file is to be played in about 3 sessions.
Okay, that sounds sounds like plenty to be getting on with there. It sounds interesting because it sounds almost kind of like episodic, like a TV show, the case file. So you'll have different episodes where we're doing this case file, and then later when there's more, or you create your own, like you say, it can be a single thing, but it will kind of tie together. So you'll look back over all the seasons, as it were.
Exactly.
It'll be one big story. That sounds really interesting. That does appeal to me there. So working on the game, like you said, it's been a number of years about thinking and kind of working on it. What's been your favorite part of kind of the design or creation process?
Oh, it's hard to pick one. It's there's a lot, but I think something that is always very cool when designing games like this is the kind of the teamwork aspect of it. And when you have, say that I had some idea of how this could look or be, and then you actually get like the first art concepts from Martin, or you get the first setting text from Joe LaFavi is the setting writer for this game. and you just see, you know, you just realize, okay, you know, it's not exactly what you envisioned, but it's kind of better. I mean, that sense when it's it's like that. Okay, now it's and it turns into something even, you know, bigger and better than you had envisioned in your head. I think that those moments are really pretty much the best ones.
The highlights, yeah. I always love it when we get games, when we get the artwork through, because it makes it feel like it's going to be a real product instead of just an idea or a concept that you have. On the flip side, I'll ask the other questions. What was the most kind of challenging part of designing this setting? What were the things that took a lot of time to get right, maybe?
Yeah, I think I already touched upon some of that, but I think getting the tone right is, and for a franchise like Blade Runner, which is quite complex, and how to transition that into an RPG, that is not easy. So I think that's been the most challenging thing for sure in this game, and also getting casework to feel, you know, to work in the right way, I mean, Blade Runner and noir as a general genre, it often focuses on an individual protagonist, whereas role-playing, at least most of it, has a team or a group.
Sure.
Getting that kind of balance right and how to make that work, that took a bit of that took a bit of work. It's not super easy. So that was definitely a challenge. But I think we found a good way to make it work for a group as well, even though it's designed, this game, for smaller groups. It's not, I don't think this game you should be playing with like 10 of your friends or something.
No,
it would kind of break.
Who wants to run a game for 10 people? That would be terrifying for me.
Yeah, no. So this one, we have basically said that it's a game master and 1 to 4 players. We don't recommend 5 or more. Of course, you can be 5 or more, but then expect there to be a bit. It won't work as well as it does with fewer players.
No, of course. That's really interesting, actually. I hadn't thought about it, because when we think about the films, it's usually one Blade Runner doing their work and we watch them. What have you done in the game to make it so that a group of Blade Runners working together makes sense for the story?
Right. A couple of different things. One is that we encourage splitting the party, actually. Well, the first one is keeping the group size down in the first bit, like I mentioned. That's kind of key. Don't, no more than 4 players, and even 4 is pushing it. I think we played mostly with 3 players, and that really works quite well. Then second thing is that we actively encourage splitting the party, even though these split scenes should be fairly short, so you don't keep a player waiting.
Sure.
But the speed or the frequency of these countdown events that I mentioned is actually tracked depending on the group size. So that means if you insist on going everywhere together as a team, you will actually probably not make progress fast enough in the case. So really, you're encouraged to split up and have small scenes individual. So so you go to that location, I'll go to this location, and you play small scenes individually there. That works as long as you cut fairly frequently between them. That really works. I think it gives a much more of a Blade Runner feel to the game than if you would go everywhere as a team. Then also the way we kind of expanded the concept of a Blade Runner, they're not all Deckard or Kay walking around in a large coat. I mean, they're not all, because that kind of it would get kind of silly in the end if everybody was exactly like that. So basically, we have a number of archetypes that will help you get the sense of what a Blade Runner can be. So we have one archetype, which is called the Inspector, which is basically your Deckard or Kay. I think that was the image you showed a bit earlier, but we have a bunch of others as well, which are focused on different things. I have like the City Speaker, which is more like a gaff type of character. You have the Analyst, which is a crime scene investigator, really more of a technical person. There is a Fixer, who's more of a social climber. There's a Doxy, which is more of an infiltrator. The Enforcer, which is a bit of a special forces type person, and so you kind of expand the scope of what a Blade Runner actually can be. They don't all look and sound the same. So that, of course, also makes it a lot more. It helps when you play group, because you will have different talent, skills, and different focus on what you do and what you're good at. So I guess those are the 3 main ways in which we have kind of got that, and also the downtime events and the downtime scenes that I mentioned before that really focus heavily on each individual character. So that's how we try to get across that sense of the protagonist that you get in the Blade Runner films into the RPG.
Yeah, definitely. I think going back to the earlier question we had from Andrew about that would be a really good way to make sure players are playing a unique part in the world. Like you say, they're not just pretending to be the main characters in the film and walking through that story. It's something different. It's in that world, but it's their story happening there. So with the different kind of archetypes you have there, what else kind of goes into character creation when you're are there kind of pre-built characters for you, or do you create your own when you're doing a case file? Or
in the starter set, there are four pre-generated characters that come with it. But those are so you can get started playing quickly.
Yeah.
You can really just choose one and go. But you can also use in the core rule book, which has a a lot of setting stuff and a lot of other things, much more resources, and including character generation. So using the core rule book, you can create your own character, and you can play the starter set case file with. If you have both the core rulebook and the starter set, you can use your own characters to play the electric beams. It's not like our alien cinematic scenarios, which are heavily where you're pretty much need to play with the pre-gens. That's not the case in the Blade Runner starter set. So you can definitely make your own.
Okay, great. And what goes into kind of character creation? Does it take a long time, or is it quite quick, or how does what would character creation look like? What goes into it?
It's fairly quick in the mechanical side. Like I mentioned, we have chosen a fairly rules-light approach, so that means it's mechanically not super complex. It's quite fast. What can take a bit of time and investment is when you design. There is a way you have a key memory and a key relationship that I mentioned. And you have a key memory no matter if you can play a replicant or you can play a human. But either way, you will have a key memory, which will be kind of a touchstone or a corner basis for your character. And you can actually roll that up. There is a generator for that now. So you can actually roll up your key memory and roll up your key relationship, which is a fast way of doing it. And it can create some interesting and sometimes, interesting results that you have to interpret somehow and that is an interesting thing, because when you do that, it kind of forces you to have a think about this character and what they really are. You can also design your key memory and key relationship yourself and just design it, make it up as you want it. Which that can be a process that you can focus a lot on and spend a lot of time on if you want to. You can also use these random charts. I think those are probably the most they're not mechanically complex, but they can be quite you can invest quite heavily into them. If you want to, but apart from that, the character generation is pretty fast and straightforward, I'd say.
That sounds good. I think that sounds like a good kind of character creation. But so mechanically, it's pretty simple. But the bit that's difficult is thinking about who is this person, what story do I want to tell, what's their role going to be in it, and that's for me, that's kind of the interesting bit. So it's good to hear. I'm not going to be there trying to work out loads of maths doing something when I'm trying to tell an interesting story.
Exactly.
So you mentioned you can be a human or a replicant. Are you always going to know which one you are, or is it possible there's some similar to the films,
Exactly. Yeah, that's an interesting thing that we handled. Yeah, like you say, we can play a human or replicant. This game is set in 2037, which in the lore of the universe is 1 year after replicants were reintroduced on Earth, and you even have replicants as Blade Runners, like you see Kay in the 2049 film. So you can be that, but the way we set it up is that if you play a human Blade Runner or a human character who at least you think is human, you can, as a player, have the option to let the game master roll a secret die, or you can even roll it without looking at the result. And if you get a specific result, you are actually a replicant without knowing it. And then that fact can then be used by the game master to in interesting ways as you play the game. But it's the way we set it up is we decided to make this a choice for the player to allow this possibility. They won't know for sure if they are, but if because this is the kind of thing where you kind of surprise a player and say, "Ha, you're actually not what you thought you were." Some players really enjoy that. Other players hate that. So we didn't really want to make it a mandatory part of the game. So instead, we could basically allow for players who want the chance to be a secret replicant to be that. But if you absolutely do not want that, we're not forcing it on anyone.
Okay, great. So you can kind of consent to opt into that like kind of storyline of thing.
Yes.
Oh, that sounds like a really good way to do it. Like I, as a player, would love that kind of moment and thing. But yeah, I imagine some people would feel a bit like cheated. They're like, oh, I've been going this way, and so yeah, it sounds like a really nice balance to it.
I think
we're coming up nearer to the top of the hour. So are there any more kind of things that we think it would be worth talking about and sharing today?
Ooh, good question. I think we covered quite a bit. Yeah. No, I can't think of anything. I mean, there's obviously more stuff, but no, I don't know.
Nothing to share today. Okay, that's great. Well, as I mentioned, the game is on Kickstarter now. So there's 3 days left. So if you go to the link that's written down here, or obviously I'll put the link in the show notes there so you can take a look. So go check it out. You will not be alone. It's actually $1.5 million just shy has been raised already. So there'll be lots of people playing this game. So plenty of people for you to play with. As I was saying, I didn't take any live questions this week, but if you have any more questions, I'm sure Tomas will be happy to talk through to him on the Free League Publishing on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch, and Free League Pub on Twitter. So if I didn't ask any of the right questions that you wanted to know, feel free to ask on there. Or, of course, back the project and ask in the comments on there as well. That's another great way to do it as well. But yes, that's everything kind of about Blade Runner there. So the last question I asked that I kind of end the show on is, do you have any tabletop RPGs you have, any favorite ones that you'd kind of recommend that aren't Dungeons and Dragons and that isn't Blade Runner? So not allowed those two.
I guess it would be kind of cheating to choose some of our other own Free League games. So I guess
probably.
I shouldn't do that. No, that would be no. But I mean, apart from that, there is really a lot. I wanted to say Into the Odd, which is a really cool game, but now I just realized we're actually publishing the new version of that new edition. So I guess that doesn't work either. So I'm gonna have to think of something completely different. I actually enjoyed playing some. We try to play lots of different games, new games, old games, pretty much anything. And we actually had now with last fall the new James Bond film came out. We actually picked up the old 80s game and really had a lot of fun with it. It's a bit of a hidden gem in a sense. It's very well made, and in many ways it's ahead of its time, I think, just considering it was made in like the mid 80s, and it's actually a lot of fun. So I like that one. It's a bit of a it's old and has some it's not perfect, but it has charm, and I like it.
Excellent, sounds good. So the James Bond RPG, there you go. So we like it. We like a film setting. So Tomas, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about Blade Runner. It's great to see it be so successful. So really, really pleased, and I'm very much looking forward to getting my copy as well. So we're also having Free League Publishing back as well next month to talk about Vaesen as well. So we'll be seeing you folks again. And next week with Not D&D as well, we are also talking about another RPG that is on Kickstarter, and that is the Die RPG. So come back next week on May the 30th to talk about that. But if you cannot wait a whole week, don't worry. Tomorrow on Tuesday, we have another episode of the Starcross Seaway, looking at the Level Up Advanced 5th editions system, and that will be taking place wherever you're watching this on here. I think that brings us to the end of the show. So Tomas, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you.